Okay, so in this video we're going to talk about why I chose the MyEnergi Eddi and Harvi system to heat my water with surplus solar energy. If you've been watching my other videos, you'll know that I've recently had solar installed, and part of that solution I decided to go with the MyEnergi products, the Eddi and the Harvi, to manage the surplus diversion of power into heating my hot water. This isn't meant to be a comparison video, it's really to kind of share my thoughts on why I went with the product and give you a little bit of a review of it. The most common competitor to this product is the iBoost. I don't have personal experience of using the product, so I can't really draw direct comparisons. I will put a link below and also this little overlay now where MyEnergi have done a comparison of the two. The reasons I went for this product over the iBoost is really a couple of reasons. One, aesthetically, I think that the MyEnergi Eddi looks more modern and I like the way it kind of seems to operate. And also the fact that it can be connected wirelessly via the Harvi, whereas the iBoost requires a cable to be connected. And where I have my immersion heater, it's kind of in the middle of the house, so it's not impossible, it'll just be messy to have to run a load of cables. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about how the setup is done. A couple of things I like about the products is they're really super easy to set up and intuitive, and kind of anyone can do it, but obviously it's recommended that you utilize a qualified electrician to install and mess around with this stuff, because obviously they are messing with electrics. So if we start off with the Harvi. So the Harvi is not required for any of the MyEnergi products, be that the Eddi or the Zappi, if you're looking at car charging as well. And we'll cover that in a different video if I get a Zappi in the future. But the Harvi is basically a little wireless box that you use to connect to your grid supply and wirelessly to the Eddi or the Zappi, so that you can wirelessly send information around how much surplus is going to the grid, which will then enable the Eddi to kind of say, oh look, there's 2 kilowatts going out, I can use that to heat water. So if you didn't have the Harvi, basically what you'd be doing is running that CT clamp cable from your immersion down to the electric box. So with the Eddi and I believe the Zappi, you get a CT clamp that has a 5-meter cable on it. Obviously you can extend that, but the wireless just makes perfect sense. So the Harvi has 3 connectors on it. So it does a couple of things. One, it can support 3-phase electricity. So obviously common in UK residential homes is single phase, so you don't have to have one CT clamp, but it does support 3-phase. But more importantly, really for here in the UK, those 3 connectors enables you to monitor 3 things. So you can monitor the grid, so obviously that's what you're connecting up by default. You can also monitor generation, so you can get an additional CT clamp that you'd plug into that, so you can also monitor the solar generation. And a third one, which is related to any storage system, so a battery system. So I'm not going to cover those in this video. I'm going to do a separate video with regards to the additional CT clamps and why you might want one. I've currently installed a separate one that is monitoring the generation, which is why you'll see I have some numbers over the little sun area on the display. You won't have that as standard. And I've got another one, so when the Tesla Powerwall is installed, to be able to monitor the battery, because there's a little bit of confusion as to how this is going to work, but we'll cover that in a separate video. Right now we're just going to focus on the Eddi side of things. So again, so all of the MyEnergi products I believe come with a 3-year warranty. The Harvi is using 868 megahertz wireless to be able to communicate, so they're using their own protocol, but this is an industry standard kind of method of wireless communication. A lot of alarm systems have it as well. Just a side note, if you do experience some issues in terms of connectivity and range, it shouldn't be a significant problem, because using that frequency gives a good coverage, so you should be able to have a decent amount of room between your electricity supply and where you have this installed. But a thing of note is, if you have a modern phone, or perhaps you're using a 4G modem for your internet connection, 4G wireless uses 800 megahertz, which is very close to the 868 megahertz wireless signal that's being used here. And again, like with alarm systems, so if you have some interference, check that you aren't trying to set up with your phone right next to it or something, because it can cause interference to this type of technology. I haven't had this problem, just putting it out there. And so yeah, that's basically the Harvi. It's providing that kind of near real-time communication back to the Eddi or the Zappi with, you know, what the surplus is, so it can redirect things. So works really well. Showing these overlay videos, how compact it is, what it looks like inside. It has a mounting bracket, so you can attach that into your electricity closet. I just attached mine by Velcro, so it's easy to take it on and off to need to do anything with it. I really like how the cables are just routed up through the bottom. You just remove that little plastic grommet and kind of plug it in, and you don't need to have a screwdriver. It's actually just push fit to get the clamps on to put the two cables in. Works really, really well. So yeah, that's the Harvi. So let's move on to the Eddi, which is obviously the main thing that's doing this surplus heater generation. So when you buy this product, it comes with a CT clamp. So you're either going to use that to wire it directly, or in my case, you use that CT clamp to connect to the Harvi, because again, that doesn't come with one. If you need to buy an additional one, they are £14 currently at the time of this video from MyEnergi. So a couple of cool things about the device. As we mentioned already, it's got wireless that can communicate to the Harvi, so it can do all that as well. It has something that MyEnergi called VariSign technology. I'm not an expert on all this sort of thing, so I'm not going to try and explain it all. I understand when I've looked at inverters, the different types of ways that power can be managed, so I kind of have a rough understanding of it. And so basically what's happening here is MyEnergi is utilizing Synwave to ensure that there's a constant clean AC power supply, and then what they're doing is managing or modifying the voltage to the immersion heater to vary how much power is going to that based on the surplus. So that works really cool. The Eddi itself has two connectors to it, so you can provide power to two heating elements sequentially. So for example, you might obviously have an immersion heater where you're heating water, and then perhaps you have, you know, heated floor in the bathroom and you want to be able to heat that as well, or two heaters or something. But you have the ability to do both, and you set in the menu system which is your priority. The system itself on the display has some nice funky icons on there. So as I mentioned, on the left hand side you've got the sun, in the middle there's a picture of a house. Those two things don't really do anything unless you have the ability to monitor the generation, but the face will, you know, smile and frown based on, you know, if there's surplus or you're pulling from the grid. But the main thing as default you're going to see is where the grid pylon is, whether, you know, how much you're pulling or pushing into that direction. So the other thing to note is you can change some of those icons as well. So in the menu system, you can go through and change it so it looks like a central heating boiler or a shower or a radiator or whatever it is you want. So it's quite configurable. These are just nice things to have, but it kind of helps differentiate the product a little bit. The main output that the Eddi can deliver is, I think, 3.68 kilowatts, so I think 16 amps in total. So the majority of domestic heaters and immersion heaters and little electric radiators will draw less than that, so obviously it will vary the power outage to kind of the maximum. So for me, with my immersion heater, I think it's a 3 kilowatt heater, so you tend to see 2.9 to 3 kilowatts going into that depending on the surplus. One of the things that we will I guess touch on briefly is in terms of the accuracy. So one of the things that I've noticed is the accuracy of the reading of surplus. So MyEnergi states that based on obviously their CT clamp and everything, there's a 1% plus or minus variance in measurement. So that's not massive, and it's good that they're open with that. I don't know if there is an increased variance in that if you're using the Harvi, because obviously if something's hardwired, it tends to be more accurate than you're going to have a bit of latency and variance in the wireless. So there's certain things that you can do in the measurement, in the management system of the device to kind of accommodate for that. So the reason I have obviously different information. So I have an OWL which isn't very accurate at all, so I wouldn't use that as your master device. But I have a Solar Edge which has a hardwired and powered CT clamp, so I'm considering that to be slightly more accurate than the MyEnergi solution. And what I've been able to see initially is the fact that even when the Eddi says that there's a surplus, and there is, it's also pulling from the grid at the same time. So if you look at this graph, I do an overlay, you can see that there's a constant beam of red going up the graph, which signifies import from the grid. And what I want to have is a gap of green and blue bar, and so there's an element where you can modify a setting in there called the export margin. And what I found for my own personal configuration is there's a variance of around 50 to 100 watts. So what I've done is I've added a 50 watt export margin. So that basically means that until there's a 50 watt surplus, the Eddi isn't going to do anything. So that kind of helps with this problem. So in general, I'm seeing a true surplus energy usage. So I'm not putting anything from the grid, but obviously there is some fluctuations and some variance. So personally, in the future firmware releases, I would like to have an ability to be more specific and have some more control about how that power is delivered, so I can always ensure I'm never pulling from the grid. And something we'll cover in another video is how this solution will work with a storage system. So if you have a battery, how is it going to work with knowing that, oh, there's this massive surplus of energy, so I will continue to try and heat the system, which is why there are delay settings and priority settings in the Eddi to try and accommodate for that. And they also recommend the additional CT clamp, which is why I've bought it. So we'll cover that in a separate video. So back on talking about the Eddi. So again, in terms of pricing, I think it's about £370 or something. So about £100 more than the iBoosters for comparison, but I think this is a much better product. MyEnergi is a relatively small company, so the support is reasonably good. So when you contact them, they are very helpful. The problem can sometimes be kind of getting hold of them because they're small, but kind of keep that in mind. I guess what we need to do is continue to support them and buy their products so they can expand, and they need to kind of manage, I guess, customer acceptation, because I think they're quite small, but people are adopting their products quite rapidly, and so there's that kind of balancing issue. The device also has an on and off and a bypass switch, so you can just turn that off if you're on holiday and you don't want to worry about heating water or anything, or if you have some issues and you don't want to use the boost function, you can just bypass it and it will basically then use whatever timer system you have for your immersion heater if it was separate to this. So in terms of the heating, so as mentioned before, the whole idea with this solution is it's heating your water based on surplus. So anytime you have any surplus, it will dribble that in to heat via your immersion heater. So a couple of good and bad things about this approach. The good thing is that you're constantly, obviously any surplus will be going in there, so putting it back to the grid. One of the things I've found is especially in the UK, where you're having a kind of a bad solar day, so there is surplus but a minimal amount, it will kind of dribble that minuscule amount in throughout the whole day. And obviously that's a good thing, but at the same time it doesn't enable the water really to get a good level of heat in it, if that makes sense. So again, what I would like the ability to do is to kind of decide, you know, what level of surplus I want, or at least set some parameters. So like if there's only, you know, how do I best say, if there's only 50 watts surplus, right, I don't see there's really much point in putting that into the hot water. I mean, granted, it might be more beneficial than putting it out to the grid, but it's not really doing much in terms of trying to heat the water, right? It's just going to kind of maintain its current temperature. So again, that's a good thing. But really, like for me, I want at least 1.5 kilowatts in there to be able to start doing something. So again, it's all personal preference, just sharing kind of my thoughts. And these things may change in firmware over time, because that's another advantage of this device. It is firmware driven. So new versions of firmware can be applied to the box. They can't be done right now very easily. MyEnergi are working on a hub that then you'll be able to have that installed, be able to see more things via an app, and also allow you to push updated versions of firmware. And I'm hoping to get one of those products to review and share with you. And I think that will be a really kind of key defining device for MyEnergi to enable them to drive continuing improvements in their systems. So we have a quick look at the MyEnergi device. There's many different menus on that on-screen display. So real nice clear crystal display that's backlit, so you can see everything, and you can see kind of how you configure it and how you configure all the clamps. So one of the key things to note here, when you're installing it with the Harvi, you have to obviously put the Harvi in pairing mode. So you press and hold the button, the light will flash different colors, and you have about 3 minutes, I think it is, or something, or 5 minutes to run upstairs and pair. It may even be less than that, it might even be 60 seconds. I'll put a note below once I verify, because it's a while ago since I did it now. Once it's paired, then you can see the fact that the Harvi is in the box, or associated with the Eddi box. Then you need to go in the menu systems and select what CT clamps are connected to the Harvi, and then in the Eddi menu, basically disable the CT clamps, because it will be expecting to try and read something from its own onboard circuitry, and obviously it needs to do that wirelessly. So you need to make sure you do that. It'll be a bit of confusion. But if you look for all the menus, you can see the amount of power that's coming through the system, how much has been diverted over the days and the months and everything. So it's really good to see some statistics. You can obviously configure the date and the time and all that sort of stuff, along with boost timers. So as I mentioned before, if you want to, you can boost your electricity. So perhaps if gas isn't an option, because gas is obviously typically cheaper to heat up your system, but if you are fully electric, you can obviously boost that. Also set boost timers. So if you have a need to have hot water like 3 AM in the morning, perhaps you will configure it to boost at 2 AM or something, so you get, you know, a 59 or minutes of boost in there, so an hour. It works really well. By default, if you want to get into some more advanced settings, you have to put a pin code in. As default, it's 0000, so just press the tick button 4 times, and that's in there is obviously where you need to configure up all the clamps and how it's configured. But it's all pretty self-intuitive. The manual is reasonably easy to follow if you're technically minded, so it's not kind of super straightforward, but it's not complex either. So yeah, I'm really happy with the product. I think the only thing, just in the interest of disclosure, so today is the 19th of September 2018, so if you're watching this video after, things hopefully would have changed. I have identified a small bug in the software, which basically it skews the data that it's getting from those CT clamps. So both the generation and the surplus is kind of multiplied by kind of a variable order of magnitude. So you can see that in this video briefly, that when you've been going through the menu systems, then when you come back to the main screen, you can see it on mine, both the generation, because I have that additional clamp, and the grid metrics have varied. And so this is something I've discussed with MyEnergi. They are aware that this is now a problem, and they're looking to develop a fix in firmware, which is fantastic. So new products will hopefully have this fixed. Then the current issue for consumers right now without a hub or anything is, how do you get that new firmware pushed out? So again, I'm still happy with the product. Just be aware that like any piece of technology, there's going to be benefits from new firmware upgrades. It's a relatively small company, so they're constantly working on improving these things. So really my kind of suggestion or workaround for now is anytime you've done anything in the menu systems, turn the device off and turn it back on again, and it will kind of clear things back out to a baseline, so you don't have that weird wonky variance. But I'm really happy. I'm really looking forward to having the hub, having the ability to have new firmware updated and continue to invest and improve this product. So yeah, that's it. I'm sure there's more things that I've forgotten to mention, but I think if you're getting a solar system and you're looking at how you can benefit from that surplus, then I think definitely consider the MyEnergi Eddi and Harvi products. Thanks for watching this video. A thumbs up would be really appreciated. If you're interested in other geek type videos, please consider subscribing to Spectrum Geeks. Why not also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And before you leave, why don't you check out one of these other videos that may be of interest. Thanks again for watching.